Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir.
Mr. Raskin was asking you about text messages with respect to January 6th. I had some questions about some messaging. I believe it was Signal that was used, I think by you and some of your colleagues, beginning around December 13th, 2020. And this is based on an affidavit that you filed yesterday in a case that's pending. Do you recall filing the affidavit?
I do.
Okay. And in the affidavit, you talked about how there was a time where you made a switch, and others, to using Signal. Do you recall that?
I recall at the direction of DHS, Signal was placed on our government cell phones as a result of the SolarWinds compromise of the department's communication.
Okay. And who was it specifically that directed the use of Signal?
I believe it was the Chief Information Officer for the Department of Homeland Security.
Okay. And so during that time period, you used Signal for until early 2021, according to your affidavit?
I physically used Signal on one occasion in a 2-week period of time.
Okay. Well, I'm not sure you said that in your affidavit, but there came a time where you stopped using it in early 2021, according to your affidavit?
That's correct.
All right. And Signal, you may know, is an application where, in some instances, it can automatically delete the communications that are exchanged on it?
Actually, I don't know that.
All right. Well, let me ask you this. As the Inspector General, you're familiar with the Federal Records Act, right?
Yes.
All right. And so you know there's an obligation to preserve official government documents. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. And electronic messaging falls under that category, isn't that right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, according to your affidavit, all of those whatever those messages were all deleted. Is that correct?
No, that's incorrect.
Okay. They're not preserved.
No, what I'm saying is that the one instance that I did use Signal, it was an oral communication telephone call with the members of the Department of Homeland Security. I believe it was their breach response team. That's the one and only instance that I ever used Signal.
Okay. Well, did your department respond that none of the messages on Signal were preserved in the filing from yesterday from the U.S. Attorney's Office?
I don't believe there were messages. There was an oral communication, not text messages or anything to my knowledge. At least in my case, I only used it once as I described.
All right. Well, let me read this to you. However, until that time, the Signal messaging application was not approved for use on DHS devices. However, I was one of a small number of users authorized to install the application on my OIG-issued cell phone for the limited purpose of discussing via secure means the response to the above described apparent breach of DHS computer networks. So that's the messaging you're talking about?
That's the oral communication, not a message. I just want to be clear with the committee.
Okay. And then in the next paragraph down, you said, no more than a few weeks after installing the Signal application, I deleted Signal from my OIG-issued cell phone because I no longer had use for it.
That's
correct?
Yes.
Okay. So any messages that are unavailable were not based on you deleting anything. It's just they were not preserved in some way?
No, what I'm saying, just to be clear, Congressman, I did not use Signal to do messaging. I used it to do a telephone call at the request of DHS.
All right. And there was nothing was done to preserve anything with respect to those telephone calls?
I don't, unless we had a Title III or some other electronic intercept of my oral communications, I don't believe there would be a message that would be preserved.
All right. Let me ask you this question. With respect to the January 6th documentation from the Secret Service, all right, and there was a 14-month delay before you notified Congress that of that issue with respect to the deletion of the Secret Service text?
Just to be clear, I answered that question previously, and it's not 14 months. We learned that DHS deleted all the email, all the text messages from the Secret Service phones. We learned that in February of 2022.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I yield back.